Welcome, everybody, to the Due North Political Podcast, Episode 7. We've got Ryan Schumacher, Leon Francis, Mike Machenbacher, and I'm your host, Perry Schumacher. 4 co-hosts. Guys, how are we doing this week?
Excellent.
Doing well.
Pretty good.
So first off, I want to mention a couple of you guys are wearing some very, very nice hats. Can you show them to the audience? Don't those look sharp? Don't those look sharp? We're going to try to make them available potentially to our audience. If you're interested in one, maybe mention it in the chat, or if you watch this online later, put it in the comments, and we're going to gauge what kind of interest we've got. We have, of course, the hot seat spotlight tonight. Jared Tufte will be in with us in about a half hour. So one thing we're going to be doing is giving free hats to our guests. So Jared gets a free hat tonight. Guys, like we do every night, we start with, every episode, we start with the jobs of Rubio, and the man is constantly busy. First one, he's been mentioned that we're going into Cuba, so Rubio is ready to take over Cuba and go to work. He's looking very dapper there, very Cuban, I would say. And then he went to China, and he had to wear the Maduro sweatsuit, and he did this really, so that was pretty cool. He wore that on the plane to China, and this is what it looked like when he got to China last week. The man can not only hold down a lot of jobs, he's got some moves too, and he does have a sense of humor, right, guys? I mean, wearing that Maduro sweatsuit was brilliant.
And it looks like he's a man of many hats
and of many talents. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
We love us some Marco Rubio. Okay, guys, we're going to start with my 2 cents, where we get your opinion on a topic of my choice, and here's the premise. Steve Deace says that we are not a country of laws, but a country of political will. This will be interesting. We have a Supreme Court justice later. We might want to get his take on this, but we're not a country of laws, but a country of political will. How do you interpret that, and how has it shaped the country either positively or negatively? Let's start with Ryan.
I interpret this similar to what we've been talking about in some of our recent episodes where we discussed Republicans and whether or not they wield the power when they have it. This political will can happen in a number of ways. One way, as Deace alludes to, is that the underlying motivation of leaders will always supersede the text of the law itself. We see this in our country today from those on the left. We saw it numerous times during the Biden administration, where they seem to flaunt every one of the laws, immigration laws, due to their underlying motivation to create more Democratic voters. We can also see this being exerted through sheer and utter determination to get things enacted, like we saw with the Democrats do with Obamacare the first time when they had the 60-seat Senate majority. But we don't see that political will out of the Republicans here with the Save America Act. But time and time again, we see Democrats throw shade to the laws of the country much more often than Republicans. And if we give Democrats power again, they're going to indicate what they're going to, or they've already indicated what they're going to try to do, which is try to give statehood to DC and Puerto Rico, pack the Supreme Court, anything to give them extra number electoral college items. And the more we allow this to happen, the more negatively it will impact our country.
So you see it as a negative?
I think it's just a situation of where we are today. I don't know that we've always been in this realm. I think early on, early 1900s, we were more of a country of laws, but as we've become more polarized, we've become more political will, or a country of political will, and by any means necessary, especially as we've seen by those on the left. I don't think Republicans quite play that game, but Democrats surely do.
Leon, let's go to you. What do you think of the premise, and is it a positive or negative on the country?
Well, I'm a big Dace fan, so I think he's exactly spot on. America has never been a nation of laws in some pristine automatic sense. We're a nation of political will. Will always be that, and that's not cynicism. You sometimes you listen to Dace and you're just like, oh, you know, but it's realism rooted in human nature and in the clear teaching of the scripture. I'm a man of God, so and our country was founded as that. So that's my worldview is kind of wrapped in that way, and I believe that the heart of man is deceitful, above all things. John Adams warned that we were made for a moral and religious people because the Constitution was wholly inadequate for any other. And without that foundation, rule of law becomes nothing more than ink on paper enforced by whoever holds the levers of power. So my interpretation is our framers designed a constitutional republic with separation of powers, checks and balances, and a Bill of Rights precisely because they knew fallen men would abuse that authority. Laws don't enforce themselves. Judges don't descend from the heavens with perfect neutrality or any of that. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Only matters if enough people with the will to fight for them are willing to back it up. Now, how do I believe this has shaped our country, positively or negatively? Well, both negatively, and this would be the dominant story of the last century. Been pretty devastating, in my humble opinion. The progressive era and beyond, as a matter of fact, turned the living Constitution into a suicide pact. You and I talked about this. Where political will of the coastal cities, activist judges, and unelected bureaucrats overrode the original intent of the document. You look at the selective prosecution. The rioters in 2020 get a pass while the J6 participants did not. You look at the big COVID tyranny, big tech censorship, lawfare against the political opponent, anybody, and it seems to go one way. I want to mention that, and we could go on and on and on. But when the political will aligns with the truth, justice, and the founding vision, it could be a powerful instrument. The abolition of slavery didn't happen through polite legalism alone. It required a moral conviction and a political force, a bloody war, included. And then you think about the post World War II order. Flawed as it was, it reflected a national will to stand against communism. So that's how I would couch Steve Dace's worldview, because it mirrors mine. To be honest.
You hear so often, right? We need another law. We need another law. The laws are all on the books, right, guys? It's just that the political will. Do you actually
Enforce them?
Good word. That's why you're here, Ryan. That's why you're here.
Glad I could contribute.
But to enforce them, right? Look at immigration. The laws are on the books. One side decides not to enforce the law, and 14 million people come across the border. The other guy decides to enforce the law, and they get shut down to a dribble, 300 a month or something like that. You know what I mean? So Dace is right. Mike, where do you take this?
Well, I think when Dace referred to political will, what I think he was referring to was how can we actually make changes at the federal level when it seems that many of our federally elected officials are afraid to cast votes because they're worried that they might not get reelected. Now, I could be wrong, but that was my take. But I guess, I would encourage our federally elected officials, and I'm not referring to our North Dakota officials, is that I do think overall they have voted in the best interest of the state. But many others that won't vote to support Trump's policies, they're forgetting that the majority of the voters in the last election voted for Trump. And I guarantee they didn't vote for Trump because he's a nice guy. They voted for him because they wanted his policies passed. And I don't think this should be difficult. If Trump won the state that these representatives and senators live in, they should easily be able to push those green buttons and not be fearful of losing any votes. If anything, I think they might actually gain votes. So when you ask about political will, it seems to me that many just don't have the political will to support policies that are popular. And you also asked about whether this would shape the country positively or negatively. Well, my assumption is negatively. And if you're out in DC and you're representing the will of the people, then you should vote to support the will of the people. And if they don't, they're going to lose. And if Republicans can't get through a good chunk of this proposed legislation that's out there right now, then the Democrats are going to win this next election, and then they'll be in charge. And you remember when we had Dustin on the show here a few weeks ago, he said that basically we have a do-nothing Congress right now. And if that's the case, the voters really don't have much of a reason to reelect some of them. And I think there are a vast majority of them that really want to pass the legislation. But when you only have a 3-seat majority in the Senate, and I believe it's just a 2-seat majority in the House right now, you need 100% of your party to get on board to pass legislation. And, and the voters in these states probably need to realize this and probably replace some with some that are going to be on Team Republican.
That's a good segue to my second part of this question, guys. Dace also uses this phrase often. For far too many conservatives, it's an industry, not a movement. And if you don't have political will, you can't be a movement. You can't change things. If it's an industry, you're just using that word conservatism to get elected, and then you go govern in whatever way your worldview is. But you use it as a cloak to drape yourself in, and then you go ahead and do what you really feel. So the political will is necessary if you want a movement, and few people have that. Look what happened in Indiana in their primary a couple of weeks ago. So Trump asked for redistricting in Indiana, and 9 Republicans vote against it. They don't have the political will to do so. And so the primary season comes and 8 of them get destroyed because the people expect you when they vote that you have the political will. You promised you were a movement type person, not an industrialist, not using it to make profit or to better your career, but you actually stood for something. So take it from there, the industry versus movement people. Without will, you can't be a movement, right? And to Ryan's point, Democrats have the will. They are a movement people. They are moving, right?
Oh, we lost him.
There he is.
We're
We lost the
having
visitor.
We're having lots of glitches tonight on Restream. I hope the audience hangs with us. But right, I mean, getting back to what I was saying, the Democrats are a movement people. They move the country. Republicans are using it for career advancement.
You can tell that too. The Democrats, it doesn't matter what crazy thing that they come up with. They all get behind it. It's all about emotion. It's still a grift, but they are able to basically capture their base, and it is 100% a movement. Republicans, and I'll give you a couple of examples. The immigration fight. Now, folks like you and I, we believe that, in order for us to have a country, we need borders, that sort of thing. But I did a show where I highlighted on Blackbeard Logic, I highlighted how many industries that were run by Republicans that were hiring illegals. Like there was a couple of governors um, in southern states that were complaining that their workforce, because of the ICE enforcement, they were losing a big chunk of their workforce. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait, no. And then you got what's going on right here in North Dakota with these people not wanting to talk to the actual Republicans. They're just skipping, they skip the whole convention thing. They're just cloaking themselves in, the R, because to them it is a business transaction. It's not a movement. It's not what you feel. You can't be a pro abortion Republican, in my humble opinion. You can't be a pro illegal immigration Republican, in my humble opinion. So you're spot on there. We're going to fracture. You already see it. We are a fractured party because a big chunk of the base has that movement mentality, but a big chunk of the elites do not. They see it as an industry.
Ryan, you see it today with today Trump endorsed Jim Paxton in Texas over Cornyn. People, I would not call Cornyn a political will type person. He's not a movement type person, right? And it was nice to see that Trump came out in Paxton's favor. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Paxton's been there Cornyn's been there 2 decades now. So yeah. I mean, he's wishy-washy. I mean, he's not he doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. He's happy to be there. So he's sucked up to Trump a little bit this last year because he knows his political life depends on it. But Trump at least came out and endorsed Paxton instead, which I felt was good.
Mike, I want to ask you, so if you have political will, you're playing offense, right? You're a movement type person. And to your point previously, too many Republicans play defense or neutral, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to comment on that even before you asked that, because what you mentioned would happen in Indiana, where some of these ones that didn't do what they probably should have done. This is not the first time that we've had the presidency, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the House. It's not the first time, but a couple other times that we've had that in the past couple decades. 70-80% of the stuff that everybody campaigned on, they didn't get done. And there's no reason when you have a majority in every governing body that you shouldn't be able to just sweep all this stuff through. And I think that people have seen this, especially those of us that have been around a while, that have seen this happen not once, not twice, but now 3 times, where we have a majority everywhere and we can't get stuff passed. So I think that people have finally had enough, and they said, okay, well, we gave you the benefit of the doubt once, we even did it twice, but we're not going to let it happen a 3rd time. I don't care how long you've been in there or how much clout you think you have. It's time to put someone else in there that's gonna actually do the hard things and make the hard votes.
People will never, at least I will never forget the big lie, Obamacare. How the Republicans said they were going to get rid of that and then never did. But we're talking about Indiana, so that segues into our Fire Away segment. And guys, this one, I want to bring up this picture as I read the question, okay? This is a map of the district in the state of Louisiana that the Supreme Court last week ruled unconstitutional because it was designed only for racial equality. Redistricting is now happening over many states, both red and blue. Mike, was the Supreme Court correct in your view on its decision? Or should we have districts designed like that, as Justice Roberts said, snake district?
Before I answer that, was I the only one that thought that looked like a map of the Missouri River in Lake Sakakawea? That was when you sent that, like, well, why are you sending this picture? Then I read the notes that you had on it. I'm like, oh, that's Louisiana, actually. But yeah, I mean, I do think they made the correct decision. You know, and the Supreme Court voted that it violated the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, which I believe is accurate. And you know, I've said it before, but I'll hit on it again. People should not be voting for their elected officials because of what they look like or based on their gender or whatever. They should be voting for candidates because of the policies that they have and the vision that they have for their country. Now, I mean, I know that's probably a shorter answer than what you're used to getting out of me, but I really think it's that simple. And no matter what your district looks like or how it's shaped, if you are a good candidate, you should be able to convince a majority of the voters that your policies will be better for your state, you know, and the country that than your opponent's policies are.
Ryan, is this tit for tat redistricting a net positive or negative in your mind?
Going into this, I thought it was going to be just another political back and forth where no one wins and a lot of time and money is spent on it for nothing. But the more as it transpired and the more I thought about it is, you know, Democrats are going to, like I said, they're going to do everything they can for an electoral advantage when they get power, whether it be flooding the country with immigrants or staunchly opposing any ID voting laws. It seems that Trump and the red states are the only ones on the Republican side that are trying to counter what the Democrats did to our country during the Biden's term. Definitely not those Republicans in Congress, but it's the states that are trying to counteract this. If the laws allow this type of redistricting, whether it be the state constitutions or common sense interpretations of existing laws like the Supreme Court we saw this last few weeks, you have to take advantage of every opportunity there is. We're long removed from playing nice between the political parties. We've seen how unhinged and crazy Democrats have become, from boys and girls sports to men can have babies to uncontrolled illegal immigration. So every option has to be on the table to keep people that believe in those things out of power as much as possible. And whether that requires redistricting through the southern states in order to remove these majority, minority, race-based districts, I think it has to be done. Like I heard someone say, you know, people of color can vote for Republicans. There are Republican, you know, congressmen, congresswomen in the United States, you know, House of Representatives, Senate, that, you know, they're not being limited in their choices. It's not race-based.
So I saw a thing on CNN when this came out, the day that the Supreme Court knocked down the Virginia one, because the Virginia Supreme Court knocked down their redistricting, and it was a CNN panel, and they were lamenting one happening in Tennessee, I believe it was, that a black will no longer, or a Democrat will no longer be serving in this black central, basically black district. And the CNN announcer goes, yeah, but a black's running as a Republican. Isn't that a good thing? And that shows you the canard of this entire thing, right? It has nothing to do with, is it a black district and will somebody from the NAACP be serving as the House of Representatives? It has to do with, is it a Democrat seat or not? That's entirely what this is about. Leon, I want to show one other picture here. This I just found this afternoon, so I want you guys to study this before we get to your question. Leon, is the end result going to basically be a baked in the cake where basically it's harder for it to ever flip a district again, meaning Republican or Democrat, because of the way they're going to be designed, and probably more fairly designed, representing the population? But isn't that just going to bake it in the cake even more, that you used to see midterms, right? There you could get 70 seat swing, and maybe is it now down to 10, 15, 16 districts that are up in play? What do you think?
Well, first off, I think it's a great thing that they stripped that whole unconstitutional. I mean, look at that map. That's crazy. It's insane. I do. Yeah, that's insane. I think it will make districts harder to flip, and here's why. Like, you stripping out race as the dominant factor lets the majority parties draw maps based on, like you said, raw partisan data, and that makes in incumbency protection via the traditional lines. It means more packed, safe seats and fewer genuine swing districts. So Democrats, they're losing their favorite cheat code, in my humble opinion, and they're livid about it because they're engineering majority black seats that help lock in the surrounding Republican ones. But what's going to happen? Um, both sides will still gerrymander where they hold power, and the racial bean counting era is just going to take that hit. It it's not a bug; it's a feature. Districts should reflect actual voters and communities, not the they're and Democrats have a problem with this. They don't see equality for equality's sake. What they see is equity. They want, the what's it called? Uh, um, had it equality of outcomes.
Yeah.
They don't want
Equity and
true
outcome, not
equality.
equality and opportunity.
Yeah, they don't want true equality. But what they're going to do, I heard AOC make a really dumb statement today. But that's any day that ends in Y. But
Tuesday.
what's going to happen is they're going to Democrats are going to lock down those northern liberal seats, and now that they can't do the racial gerrymandering, down below, they're going to go back to the traditional way that we drew lines, and that's what the partisan data, incumbency protection, swing districts. I think that they were shocked that they were actually getting away with this thing for this long. I'm shocked. I did not know that you could draw districts based solely on race. I had no idea because we fought a war. Separate, it's not equal. I thought that whole thing was done, but apparently Democrats are going to Democrat.
So the only big shift I see is once every 10 years when they do the sense is that what it's called, Ryan?
Census.
Yeah, the sense.
Census,
So
yeah, sense. So, but I mean, you have population migration, right? People are leaving these communist states to go to Florida, North Carolina, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee. You're going to see shifts there that are going to shift. People are leaving the blue state to go to the red state. That's the only thing I see that's going to be the big swing now, but that's only going to happen every 10 years.
Yep.
I was going to say that if you can garner 7 to 10 seats out of this redistricting thing here, 2028, 2030 are going to be your kind of up in the air elections, but 2032, once the results of the census come into play in the 2032 redistricting, you're going to see another 7 to 10 seats gained, and that's just purely gained because of the population movement, migration, like you said, to the southern states, to red states, Texas, Florida, away from New York, away from California. So you're going to have, between this and, like I said, the census impact, you could gain up to 20 safe Republican seats going forward, which will make it that much harder for Democrats.
Mike, I want to ask you this. So I think Trump is underestimating the backlash he's going to get at the midterms. I think they think this is part of the defense, but I don't think this one's going to stop it here. You see Alabama's already balking. Again, we talk about political will. South Carolina's talking about it, but are they actually going to do something? Some of these southern states are not moving as hard as they could, political will-wise. So I think Trump is hoping that this is going to negate some of his butt kicking he's going to take here in November, but I'm worried it's not going to do the trick. What do you think?
Well, I have the same concern, and I'm not going to say I support this or don't support it. at least not yet anyways. But, I've talked to so many Republicans from around the country. We do attend conferences in different states and such. And I hear so many of them say that we want to take the political high ground and do what's correct, when the other side certainly doesn't care about the political high ground. They just do what will keep them in power. So, at one point, though, if you only got one side that's playing by the rules and the other side isn't playing by the rules, it's not what I would condone. But at one point, if the other side is not playing by the rules, you're going to lose all power that you ever could have or ever do have. So maybe, and this, I think, is probably the first time that I've ever seen in the years that I've been involved with politics, where Republicans are finally really fighting back. And I think they know that this probably isn't taking the political high ground, but they need to do it. Otherwise, we're going to be in a permanent minority, if you want my opinion.
I want to end this segment here before we bring Jared on. We started with Steve Deace, and he says frequently, we're in a steel cage match. There's only going to be one winner in this. These two worldviews, men can have babies, and the truth can't compromise. We're in a steel cage match unless that side comes to their senses. Mike, Leon, I've known you. Ryan, I've known you all your life. But these other two guys I've known for 10 years, 12 years. We haven't changed an ounce. Not an ounce. But the Overton window has moved so far, it's in the other state now. And these, like Dave says, we are in a steel cage match. And there's only going to be one winner here. And Republicans better play tough. Trump kind of forces them to, but way too many John Thunes and John Cornyn's don't want to. We're going to bring in Jared Tufte now for the, what do we call, the hot seat spotlight. Let me find him here. There he is. Here he comes.
There he is.
Here
Jared,
he is.
welcome to Due North Political Podcast. And Mike, we'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, so today we're happy to have on with us North Dakota Supreme Court Justice Jared Tufte. And Justice Tufte, why don't you just go ahead and give us a brief introduction? Tell us who you are. What did you do before becoming a Supreme Court Justice, and maybe how long you've been in the position, and then we'll have the hosts ask you some other questions.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Perry, Mike, Leon, and Ryan. I'm glad to be on your show and talk to you and your audience tonight. After listening to your opening segments, I feel like I need to remind your audience that judicial candidates are nonpartisan. So we can talk to audiences of any party or no party about our campaigns, but we stay out of the intra-party battles. So I noticed on your crawler you have an effort to disagree respectfully and to have real conversations from different perspectives, and I think, from my perspective, that's really the best part of my job. When my colleagues and I work through challenging issues and we respectfully disagree, but get to the truth through disagreement, I think is the best part. So I'm in my 10th year on the North Dakota Supreme Court. I'm seeking a second 10-year term this year, and I'm running on my record of what I've done, the opinions, the management of the courts, the committee work, and the way I approach the job. Just sort of brief background. I think I have really deep experience and broad experience around the state. I was born in Minot, grew up in Grand Forks and West Fargo, and started at a really big law firm that had 700 lawyers down in the Phoenix area. And then I came back to North Dakota to raise my family and worked in a solo practice in the community of Steele. Served as a Army JAG in the North Dakota Army National Guard, and was a prosecutor and a trial judge. And I've done a little bit of everything over the years, and since 2016, I was elected and began on the Supreme Court in 2017. So I guess I'm at your mercy on the hot seat. Usually judges control the flow of conversation, but we'll see how hot this seat is.
Not today, Jared, not today.
I don't know how hot it gets. We kind of use it as an informative thing for our audience. Last 2 weeks ago, we were learned a little bit about the legacy fund. So that's kind of the function of it. You're under the spotlight. And first thing I want to ask you is, how does the Supreme Court differ from the county courthouse that we're all familiar with?
Well, yeah, thanks kind of for starting at the beginning, Perry. I think courts, unless you've had the fortune or misfortune to get summoned into court as a witness or a juror, which usually people like, people may not understand the difference. So each of our 53 counties has a courthouse, and it's not just courts in those courthouses, but that's where judges hear witnesses, they get evidence submitted, and they decide cases based on the facts and the evidence that's presented in those courtrooms. At the Supreme Court, what we do is we take the written record that's developed in those trial courts and review those for legal errors. And so sometimes we find that there's a legal error, and then we have to have the trial court make a correction or do something over. But we don't see witnesses. We don't have people come into our courtroom and present evidence or take testimony. We're one of only 10 states, or about 10 states, that doesn't have an intermediate court of appeals. So if somebody thinks something happened in one of those trial courts that didn't go correctly under the law, then that appeal comes to us, and we get 300 to 400 of those a year.
Let's just a follow up. Inform the audience how many justices sit on the North Dakota Supreme Court.
Yeah, we have 5, and so every 2-year cycle, one of us is up. This year, it happens to be 2 of us is up because when somebody retires in the middle of their 10-year term, the governor gets to appoint somebody to finish out that term.
Mike, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, sure. So, Justice Tufte, could you just tell us, kind of what does an average day look like in the life of a Supreme Court justice, and maybe how often you're in court, and what other responsibilities do you have?
Yeah, I think top of mind for the court's work is the cases that we decide, and some of those end up in the paper, and most of them don't. But we get about 25 or 30 cases a month submitted to us, and
wow.
Yeah, quite a few. So it's a little over half probably right now are argued. So we'll have about an hour's worth of oral argument in the courtroom about those. Some of those on Zoom still since COVID. All of those cases have a lot of reading, thousands of pages of reading per month to decide those cases. So it's a lot of material to get through. We have some lawyers that work with us and help us with some of that. But that's just part of the job. So the Constitution gives the 5 of us on the Supreme Court the management responsibility for the whole judicial branch. And so that's all of those judges in those county courthouses and all the staff that we have and all the different things that the legislature assigns us to do. And so, there's rulemaking, there's budgeting to put together for the legislature when they come back into session to get the needs that we have in the judicial branch supported. So that's kind of the thumbnail sketch. I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yep. No, it's good. Thanks.
All right.
I got
Ryan,
a
you're
question
next.
that's kind
Yeah.
of
Go
off
ahead.
topic, but so I'm kind of familiar, how the Supreme Court works and how they can reject certain cases and they can take up certain cases. You guys, you're like you mentioned earlier that you guys do all the maintenance and all of the judicial lawmaking that affects the judges on those other courts. Have you ever had a judge who, broke a rule and you guys had to mitigate that?
Yeah, so and I left that out of my list. So lawyer and judge discipline is also part of our responsibility. So if there's a lawyer who's violated the rules of ethics for lawyers, or if there's a judge who has violated the code of judicial conduct, we have an administrative process that it initially goes to, but the final decision is for the court on whether and how much to sanction somebody for a misconduct.
Sorry, Ryan.
No, no
I didn't
worries.
want to forget that.
No, go ahead. That was fine. So I had a question. Today's day and age, judges are often talked about as being partisan figures, on the left or the right, depending, a lot of it depends on the person's political leanings and whether they agree with the decision or not. Do you see this as something new, or has this kind of always been the case?
Honestly, I think it's probably always been the case. First comes to mind is very, very beginning Marbury versus Madison. We had big cases that were partisan food fights. And so that's, 1802, 1803, something like that. I believe it was the Madison-Jefferson administration, some late night appointment at the last minute of judges. And there was a dispute about delivery of the documents that finalized those appointments. That ended up in the U.S. Supreme Court, and that divided people on partisan lines. So it's got a long-standing tradition in our country. I think since then, of course, you're looking at Dred Scott and a whole host of cases in the New Deal era, and in the 1960s, there was a lot of cases that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court and lower courts that divided the country and that led newspapers and commentators to accuse judges of being political actors. The judges I work with are all doing their best to decide the cases that are in front of them on the law. And I know from the outside, sometimes it does sort of look controversial, or it looks a little bit like we didn't fully explain ourselves how the law applies and how we're just following the law and not making policy. But in my experience, yes, there's the long tradition of the courts of being accused of partisan actions. But in my personal experience, I haven't seen it.
I guess, sorry to follow up as well, is it
Yeah.
have maybe more to do with a judge, or I guess, not a lawyer, but judges now, since they're ruling the cases, being more of a constitutional judge, or whether it be, or whether their leanings are more, the Constitution is a living document that evolves and changes to the times, or is more, structured. And does that frame people's opinions of whether they think judges are, biased one way or another?
Well, I think what you're getting at is sort of questions of judicial philosophy and interpretive approach, and how judges think their job is properly carried out when they're faced with a statute or a constitutional provision that might have multiple ways to read it. And so I think those are all fair. And in a state like North Dakota, the voters ultimately get to pick who the judges are. And so I think judges do need to explain their method for approaching questions of legal interpretation, so that the people can hold the judges accountable to employing a method that's consistent with the judicial role.
Leon, you got a question?
Oh boy, do I! No, I'm just in case you're not familiar with me. I'm a huge original intent guy. But I see a lot of judges that I would say are political. It's probably not so much here in North Dakota, but like on the national scale. So we see like the media just polarizes everything. And you mentioned our ticker down there. How do you get away from the whole partisan thinking? How do we get away from that aspect of judicial? Some folks would say judicial polarization, partisanship. How do we get away from that? And you mentioned in your last answer that you haven't really seen that on the North Dakota Supreme Court. Do you see that on the national scale? The politicization of judicial rulings and things like that. And how do we get away from that? How do you speak to North Dakotans and tell them that your North Dakota Supreme Court is not a political animal? How do we do that?
Well, I think we in North Dakota get away from that by informing our voters of the right way to think about who's suited to be on the bench, and who understands the limited role that the judiciary has in our system. I think it's fairly uncontroversial that courts are charged with protecting the rights of the people that have been put in the Constitution and taken off limits for the legislature to encroach on. But the rest of those policy choices that are up for debate are left to the legislature to decide when they enact statutes. And so North Dakota differs from some states. We have some states that elect judges on partisan ballots, and I think Texas and Oklahoma and North Carolina. I think there's a few others. Those are entirely different. And so, in responding to your question about how North Dakota is different, we have judges that before they became judges probably were active in one party or the other, and they have to take that hat off when they become a judicial candidate, and then they have to keep it off if they win the election or the appointment and become a judge. And so it's a constant education process. It's civic education. Judicial campaigns are largely reteaching people what they hopefully learned in high school about the different branches of government and the different roles of different people in state government. It's pretty boring campaigning, quite frankly, to most people, but it's important for people to realize that judges are properly not engaged in those debates.
Jared, I have a question as we come full circle here. So you're sitting in law school. What years were you in law school?
1999 to 2002.
Did Jared Tufte, sitting in law school in 1999, ever think you'd be on the North Dakota Supreme Court? And how did that evolution take place?
Yeah, so one of the jobs that law students really seek after as their first job out of law school is to clerk for a judge. And so I was pretty successful in law school, and I was able to get a clerkship with a federal appellate judge. And so it wasn't really until then that I thought, maybe I'd like to be a judge at some point if the stars align. If you want to be an appellate judge, as I mentioned, there's 5 of us on the North Dakota Supreme Court, and then there's 1 federal appellate judge that sits in North Dakota. So there's 6 jobs in the whole state if you want one of those jobs, and they don't turn over very frequently. So you can imagine, even if you're really well suited to that and it's something you really want to do, it's just not necessarily something that you're going to be right place, right time. But I would say yes, right soon after law school, when I got to experience working for a court for a really good, thoughtful judge, that I thought, boy, if things line up, I would sure enjoy doing that kind of work.
So Jared, as you mentioned, you're running for re-election right now. Why don't you go ahead and take a minute, tell us about your campaign, how it's going, and what do you want the listeners to know about Jared Tufte?
Yeah, well, I kind of gave the thumbnail sketch in my bio up front, so I won't repeat that. But, running again this year, I got some things organized in January. I wasn't real sure how intense the campaign cycle was going to be this time. 10 years ago I ran, and I had one opponent, and we had some joint appearances and generally didn't see a lot of each other, but I had my message and I was out there talking to every group that would listen to me. And so this time it's a little different. As an incumbent, people have a record that they can see. They can see what kind of a judge I've been, and I think I've done exactly what I said I was going to do 10 years ago. It's been really encouraging this year, especially in the last month or two, to have people reach out, to offer to help, to endorse me, to ask for signs, to do all that sort of stuff. 10 years ago, I was more of an unknown, and it was a little bit more of a self-run operation. So, that kind of feedback, that encouragement is nice. Judges don't like to be in the news. Courts don't like to be in the news. It's usually not helpful feedback for us. But when you get people in state and local government and other folks that pay attention to the courts, that really do care about the future of our state and our country, when those kinds of people say they respect my work on the court, that does mean a lot to me. So the campaign's busy. It's a lot of appearances like this, talking to audiences of all different backgrounds and perspectives, and reaching out to people on Facebook and the campaign website, tufte.us. My committee's out there talking to people. I should probably, maybe it's useful, interesting detail about judicial campaigns. I'm not allowed to ask people for contributions. I'm not allowed to do that sort of direct personal requests for endorsements and things like that. I have to have a committee handle all of that stuff. So it helps keep me isolated from the potential influences that we don't want to be influencing our judges. So that part of the campaign is really different from those of you that have been involved in legislative and other political campaigns. But I'm feeling good about it. I think we're on the right track, and we'll be busy all summer and into the fall.
Jared, we appreciate you being on. We're gonna move to our looky here segment. It's up to you if you want to stay on or not, or we can bid you adieu. What we basically do here is each one of us has a suggestion maybe that the audience hasn't seen social media wise, and we kind of end the show with that. We have no idea what the other guy's, his reasoning for bringing that online or to the audiences. interest is. So it's up to you. Do you want to hang around, or would you like to exit at this point?
I think I'll drop off at this point, and maybe I'll catch it on the recording later. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. We thank you for being in the spotlight tonight, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Okay, guys, we have our looky here segment. I'm going to start with Ryan. You're the first guy. Should I bring that up?
Sure. So I don't know if you saw Kamala was back in the news this last week with her there's no bad idea for brainstorming for what your wish list is with if and when they gain power again, the Democrats, but just another segment of this is how crazy these people are. If you vote for them, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get packed Supreme Courts is one of her ideas. DC statehood, Puerto Rico statehood, immigration that just keeps flowing. What did I see? Article yesterday that in the entire month of April, there were less immigrants captured or encountered at the border under Trump than there were in an hour under the Biden administration in their largest month where they were having immigrants flooding the country. So in the entire month of April, there was less illegal immigrants encountered at the border than in 1 hour under the Biden administration.
I can see why people are so anxious to go back to that. My gosh.
That's insane.
That's why we do these looky heres. They're shocking to the system. Leon, we're going to move to yours, okay?
Oh yeah.
Here you
So
go.
my looky here is this, and these are this is from my buddies at Fargo First. They do a great job breaking this stuff down. I want you to look at where Fargo is sitting, with their debt. Perry, did you know that they were $1.37 billion in debt? Did you know that?
Leon, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
When you see it in comparison to other cities, it blew my mind.
It is. This is insane. And Mayor Mahoney downplays this. He says, there's nothing to see here. But I want you to look at debt per resident there. And look where Fargo is in comparison to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or Rochester, Minnesota, or Des Moines, Iowa. I mean, no one even comes close. You have to go to Bismarck to even get close. And not saying something else. That's a whole other show. But the fact that these chuckle nuts put the city of Fargo $1.37 billion in the hole while telling everybody, hey, there's something to see here. That just blew my mind.
I'm in Minnesota, so I'm not attuned to this, but where did that money all go? What fantasy projects did they all spend it on?
Drug needles for addicts, boofing kits, crack pipes. I mean, you name it. These people, and they give. What they like to do is they give their buddies all these tax incentives, these free handouts, and what happens is these people take all the millions of dollars. They don't build the infrastructure per se, but they'll renovate some infrastructure. Maybe they'll build it. They'll last for 5 years or something like that, right before they have to start paying taxes, and then they skedaddle. And then, so the city of Fargo is left holding the bag, and you're just like, wait, what?
Has there been a referendum or anything put before the city council to change the name of the city to Mini Minneapolis?
No, I tried.
So it's basically Fargo's.
Sorry, Barry, go ahead.
Basically, Fargo's taken the federal idea. If they can be 40 trillion in debt, we can be $1.37 billion in debt. Gosh darn it.
100%. Luckily, we got
winner.
Luckily, we got Michelle Turnberg running. for mayor, and I like her, nice conservative gal. And we got Tony Gehrig, who is run back. And Tony, when he was there, he was a fiscal hawk, man. That dude was like, nope on everything. He's like me when my 8-year-old asked me for money. I'm nope. I don't care why you say you need it. It's just a no. We have a bobcat out here that I need to buy a new shovel for. So it's a no on pretty much everything until we get that thing fixed. And that's how Tony was. Tony was a fiscal hawk. So I'm glad to see he's coming back. So the city of Fargo, if they're smart, they'll elect those fiscal conservatives. And I'm hoping against hope, because again, I'm outside looking in now, and I just can't believe, like, when they told me they were giving out crack pipes, I'm like, there's no way. Yes way. They were doing that. And then I made a big deal about it across many, many platforms, and luckily they stopped it. But they're still shucking out those drug needles and boofing kits like it's nobody's business. So there you go.
Fargo's
You know, I
not
was going to
very-
say, Leon. Before you go, I read that article when you sent that, and and Mayor Mahoney said that they were not concerned about it because it was based on growth. And so when I thought about that, I mean, if you just take Fargo's debt and you pretend it's a credit card, okay, if you're going to start paying off that credit card, that's fine, but you can't keep adding to the debt. So if they're going to keep spending at the same level, and then through inflation and growth, then start to pay off that debt, that's fine. But when you add people, if you're at 133,000 right now, if you have 150,000 in 10 years, that's 17,000 more people that you need to provide services for and provide roads for and infrastructure for. So you're going to continue to raise that debt. So I am not an economist, but I know for a fact you can't pay off a debt if you keep spending. So I don't know. Leon, are you running for mayor out there?
Oh God, no. I wouldn't know where to start. I think Perry, because Perry is an accountant, I think he would probably be able to. But me, no. Like my hat is off to Michelle, because this is going to be a heavy lift. It's going to be a heavy lift, and I've said that from the beginning. Whoever gets in there now, oh my God.
Mike, you said you're not an economist, but you did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
I did. Yep. That's all you need to do.
We'll go to Mike's looky here. Here you go, Mike.
All right. I think this is going to be the best one of the week. Perry, you can still take me out on this one here, but so I'm just assuming that everyone that's listening has got an email or a text message or a phone call from someone that is trying to scam you out of your hard-earned dollars. And I'm also going to assume that everyone that's listening at one point has asked themselves, why can't the U.S. government do something about this? Americans lose approximately $119 billion annually from various scams. And we can put private citizens on the moon. We can track mad cow disease to the exact cow that started it. We can track every expenditure that every U.S. citizen makes. So why can't we find out who these scammers are and do something about it? Well, according to this article, it turns out that we actually can. The country of Myanmar, of all countries in the world, they located a building where approximately 1,500 scammers were operating out of, and the Myanmar military bombed it. I mean, can you imagine if the U.S. military started bombing every scam center in the world? I mean, do you think maybe this would deter some of these scammers if they knew that if they went to work that day that there's a chance that they could get incinerated? I really never thought that, we could learn something from the Myanmar military, but it turns out that on this one, maybe they're one step ahead of us.
Well, Minnesota wouldn't exist then if we got rid of scam.
Well, maybe we just need to
say
hire the Myanmar military.
I was going to say half of Minneapolis would be gone.
And they aren't U.S. citizens, so should be legal.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that one.
Okay, guys, this is mine. And I bring this up mainly for I want people to be aware of Steve Baker. Steve Baker is a journalist, used to work for the Blaze, now he's independent, but Perry doesn't trust institutions at all anymore. And this is showing that Capitol Police, Baker went independent here recently because he's trying to uncover the January 6th hoax and the pipe bombing thing, and the CIA is after him. So I want people to follow him. He works with this Joseph Hanneman, and the Capitol Police last week documents were released where it was an intentional and malicious conspiracy to create a disaster to sack the current Capitol Police Chief Steve Sund, and that was worked by not only Capitol Police people but also Democrats in Congress. They wanted to get rid of this guy, and they saw an opportunity on January 6th. Dig into it, people. I think it was announced yesterday or the day before. There was 26 FBI agents in the crowd that day, and we saw FBI director, what was his name, Frey or whatever his name is, under Biden. He answered Congress. He didn't know anything about it. He'd have to look into it. You know what I mean? But people, there's something smelling here. We've all known it. It's slowly but surely coming out because of these two reporters. Nothing will ever get done about it, obviously, but they are not giving up. They are not giving up, and that pipe bomb thing was a complete hoax. And the guy they have arrested, there's no way in hell Perry will ever believe that they've got the right guy arrested. No way. He's a proxy. He's a stooge, and it's our institutions. Yes, he's a patsy. Our institutions are in trouble, and these two reporters. That's mainly why I brought it up. Follow them, Steve Baker. He's very worthwhile following. Guys, you got anything else to add tonight?
I would say until we start growing tall trees again and making short ropes, we're going to have a problem.
There has to be justice, and nobody, you saw Rand Paul brought in a CIA guy last week, that whistleblower talking about COVID. Yeah, after Fauci's already been pardoned, that's how this game works. It's just a beautiful thing. But we'll leave it at that. Everybody's frustrated. The country's frustrated. Mike, let's talk about who's in our hot seat spotlight next week.
Yep, sure. Our next show, which is going to be on June 2nd, we're going to have Russ Hansen on. Russ is currently running for the Bismarck Park Board. And, Park Board might not sound as sexy as state legislator or mayor or U.S. senator or whatever it is, but we want him to come on the show to answer some questions and really tell us the importance of municipal elections and how they are potentially even more important than federal and state elections, and why people really need to pay close attention to these races. So mark your calendars, June 2nd, Russ Hansen running for Bismarck Park Board.
Okay, guys, anybody else? Anything to add?
No.
Good show. We'll see you in 2 weeks, June 2nd, like Mike said. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice hat, Leon.